The movie begins by showing us Matt, a terrified young boy, speaking to a woman about the first time he experienced the alien invasion. He explains that his father and brother, Tom and Hal, had gone out to get food that morning and he was scared for their safety. In the ruins of the city, Tom and Hal are trying to scavenge food from what's left of the markets while alien ships shoot at them. While hurrying with a cart full, they are attacked, losing their food and one of their friends to the green, eight-legged aliens. Dragging his son by the collar, he gets him out of the danger zone through one of the exits where they run into their group. As they run back to their camp, they see a ship fly by their heads, realizing something in a specific area of the city, making it bright white. Back at the residence, Tom finds his young son asleep in a dislodged car seat and heads over to check on him. Picking up his son, he passes by his friend Ann, who makes a sarcastic comment about him being back from work early. He explains their failed mission with telling her about the people they lost on the food run. Tom is then called to a meeting where Jim, the leader of the resistance, tells the group that the city was now lost and they must divide into units of 300, separating to different places where they could be safe and find more food. Having lost a child in the city, Tom disagrees, saying that they should stay and fight, but Jim reminds him of his two remaining sons that he needs to keep safe. Jim then starts assigning groups to them and their second in command, telling them where they're going and giving them maps with stores circled out to make it easier. Tom is named the second in command for the group led by Weaver, which seems to annoy him. The next morning, the designated groups start heading out with their assigned leaders. Anne tries to get all of her medical supplies into the car while Tom consoles his son about missing his birthday party. As the group travels away from the city, they are anxious to see that most of the stores on the way have been picked clean. Realizing that it might be the same until they get to the destination, Tom offers to go back to one of the large stores and bring supervision. Although he agrees with the idea, the arrogant Weaver is only willing to give him a handful of fighters and a few guns. Taking what he can get, Tom and his men return to the city. Hal and his friend Karen head out first to scout the area, splitting up at an intersection. Hal finds a suitable spot to check the area when suddenly he sees two armored aliens come toward him and hide. As he sneaks a peek, he sees a group of children with strange machines attached to their backs following the aliens and notices his brother with them. Hurrying back to his father, Hal tells him the good news, urging them to go get him immediately. Although Tom is eager to see his son, he knows that he has to stick to the mission so that his youngest, Matt, is not left alone. Hal and Tom fight about their next course of action, but Tom manages to convince him to do as he says. That night, the group slowly makes its way to the large market, and after scouting it, they start loading as much food as they can into the truck. Suddenly, they're attacked by two aliens that had been hiding in the market, but they manage to take them down with a group effort. Once they get everything they need, the group returns to the people who had been waiting for them by the bridge. In private, Tom speaks to Weaver about going back and getting his son as soon as they raid, to which the leader strongly disagrees. Telling him that he would do anything he can to get his child back, Tom leaves the room. Outside, Tom, Hal, and the others celebrate Matt's birthday, gifting him with a skateboard they had gotten him from the store and watching him as he rides around. Episode 2, the scene opens with Tom and his team on another mission to retrieve weapons from the armory. To make sure no aliens are lurking around, they throw a ball and have their pet dog retrieve it. Suddenly, an alien robot appears out of nowhere and opens fire, forcing them to retreat. Days later, Tom wakes up Matt from one of the beds and takes him outside to have breakfast. Tom had planned to go looking for his kidnapped son that night, and Matt is excited about it. After grabbing his son a plate, Tom goes to speak to Weaver about the promise he had made about helping him find his son, but the captain makes a point that Tom has not fulfilled his side of the bargain by raiding the armory. Angry at the dismissal, Tom follows him, and they're interrupted by Anne, who asks Weaver to let some of the people sleep in homes like the fighters instead of tents. The patronizing captain tells her that his troops need the best accommodation to fight better and dismisses her request. Outside, the community goes through their daily routine and chores, helping each other with their tasks. The people have constructed an outside school so that the children continue learning, even though the chances of utilizing it grew slimmer by the day. After class, Uncle Scott, one of the teachers, speaks to Tom about a realization he recently had about the aliens and their bipedal robots. Hal and Karen haul water bottles up to one of their houses where she teases him about one of the girls who had a crush on him. Telling her that Lourdes was just being nice, he held her close and kissed her. Suddenly, he is interrupted by his father, who shyly looks away. Once the coast is clear, Tom tells his son and Karen that Weaver has ordered them to check the armory, therefore they would have to postpone the search for his brother for the next day. Although he's upset, Hal agrees. That night, the group of 6 sneaks into the armory and looks around for any leftover weapons. As they quietly rummage around a loose arrow that comes out of nowhere, it's one of their crew in the chest, shocking him into firing around the room before collapsing. As they take cover, a voice from the darkness announces that Tom needs to put his gun down, threatening to shoot two of the people they captured, Hal and Karen. Putting their guns down, Tom and the others come out of hiding, allowing themselves to be captured. Taking them to the theater out back, the leader of the white supremacist thugs, John, announces that he knows exactly who he is and which resistance they had come from. Threatening his father and friends' lives, the man forces Hal to return to his people and bring him more guns. He addresses Maggie, one of his subordinates, to go with Hal and make sure that he does as he's told. While Maggie escorts Hal in a blindfold, John has a private conversation with Tom, asking him about his previous life. As they converse, John explains that the alien invasion was the best thing that happened to him due to his criminal past. He then shares a trick with Tom on how to easily kill the aliens by telling him instead of going for the heads, it is ideal to go for the legs because it severely weakens them. Tom notices the sidearm of one of the men lying down on the stage, passed out after being hit by a flying bullet, and tries to engage John in freeing his hands to drink a beer so he can get to it. But before he can do anything, John mentions it, explaining that he had already noticed Tom subtly trying to reach it. Realizing he had been caught, Tom offers John a place in their resistance, but the man sarcastically turns him down. After getting Hal out of their hiding spot, Maggie takes off his blindfold and warns him that he only has an hour to return. Hal hurries back to the camp and tells Weaver what had happened in the armory. Although the captain is sympathetic, he tells Hal he can't help him because he has civilians to protect and promises him that once they get them to safety, they will return for his lost team. When Weaver leaves and tells Hal that she could try and help him by offering her medical expertise to the injured man who was also John's brother. When the two return to the auditorium, John is mad that he didn't get what he asked for but lets in help his brother while he and some of his men go to raid the resistance. As soon as they leave, Maggie is triggered by Billy's inappropriate comment to Karen, remembering her own abuse after they kidnapped her 3 months ago and shot him. Once she frees Tom and his people, they take all the weapons John had been hiding and follow the thugs. When they make it to the resistance, they find John and his men strong-arming Weaver into giving them their food and guns. Tom opens fire at the group of men, catching them off guard and tipping the aliens off on their position. They manage to take out most of them and the alien ship annihilates the rest, John being the only survivor. Weaver catches John trying to escape and puts him into custody. In the morning, Weaver addresses Tom regarding the events that transpired the previous night and allows him to go find his son. Outside, Tom takes Anne for coming to help him, and she gladly tells him that he would have done the same for her. Tom then heads out with his team to find his lost son. Episode 3. After days of searching, Tom and his crew finally find his son Ben, and a dozen other children with the controlling device sticking to their backs, being used as slave labor. As they're scouting the area from one of the roofs, Karen accidentally drops a brick, alerting the aliens and forcing them to retreat. When they make it back to camp, dozens of parents encircle them and overwhelm them with questions about their lost children. The group isn't able to answer all their questions, so they ask them to post their children's pictures on the wall, and each time they go out, they would check for their lost kids. Tom is then informed that their commander, Jim, has arrived and he and all the fighters have been called for a briefing. Jim informs the crowd that they have discovered other freedom fighters all around the country who are regrouping to take down the enemy. He then orders them to start collecting anything that can be used as a weapon for the upcoming fight. Taking him aside, Jim tells Tom that their doctors have been trying to get the harness off of the children, but they kept dying. He then explains one of their brilliant doctors has figured out a way to remove it safely, but to test it out, they would need Ben. In the makeshift cell they made, John complains about the food, saying that he could do a much better job. After they petition his case and ask Maggie for her input, they agree to allow him to work in the kitchen under strict supervision. Tom heads to speak to Anne about the new procedure, and she tells him that she has met the doctor, telling him the name. Tom immediately recognizes it as an old friend of his wife who had left with her to scavenge the day she died. Tom meets Michael, who gives him the details of what transpired that day, apologizing for the loss of his wife. Michael tells his friend that although he couldn't save his wife, he would try to give him his son back. Once the team is geared up, Tom and his crew head out to the abandoned hospital where they have seen the kids. After setting up the explosives, Mike and Tom crouch down waiting to see Ben to go get him. Suddenly, Mike sees his lost child, Rick, and loses his calm, screaming his name and running towards the boy. Hearing the commotion, one of the alien robots appears and targets Mike and his son, forcing Tom to trigger the explosives prematurely. While they get Rick into the truck, another robot intercepts them, causing an explosion that hurts Tom. Di drags him into the car and drives off, leaving Hal and Karen trapped behind. Tom awakens in a tunnel with Di and Mike. When he finds out that his son has been left behind, he decides to return alone to rescue him. While he's walking inside the dark tunnels, he encounters one of the aliens who brutally attacks him but manages to take it down, cutting its leg and dragging it to camp alive to be studied. Hal awakens amongst the rebels and sees Karen passed out next to him. He watches as the enslaved children drag her body away while a robot aligns 5 young children in front of him. One of the aliens appears out of nowhere and indicates to Hal to watch what is about to unfold, ordering the robots to fire upon the children, killing them as punishment for their attack. Back in the camp, Michael prepares to remove the harness from Rick's back, explaining the procedure in detail to Anne so she can administer it when he's not there. After a couple of minutes of delicate cutting, the procedure is successfully completed and the patient is put in a stable state. After speaking to Weaver, Tom gets more ammunition and heads out to retrieve his son alone. On his way to the abandoned hospital, he sees Hal walking alone and runs towards him, grabbing him just as he's about to fall. The traumatized Hal explains to his father what he had seen and the message they had sent by killing all those children. The two realize that if they return for the kids, they need to take them all. When Nam returned to the camp, he checked on Rick, who seemed to be stable, proving that they could remove the harnesses without killing the kids. He then finds Michael, who was getting drunk on his own, and confronts him about abandoning his wife the day of the attack. Michael drunkenly admits that he chose to save himself instead of her and implies it was also Tom's fault for letting her go alone. Unable to control his anger, Tom pinches Michael, who still seems careless. Picking himself up, he tells Tom that he should be grateful because he might get his son back because of him, then walks away. Episode for the following day: Weaver, Michael, and a group of people get the imprisoned alien out of its cell and into another one, which would simplify the studying process. Weaver then calls Tom for a meeting and tells him that John has claimed that there was a motorbike shop just off the freeway, and he wanted him to check if there are still some left. Taking their prisoner, Tom and his usual crew head out on foot to scout the area in question. Hal is still torn up about what happened to Karen and his inability to save her. Although Tom tries to speak to him, Hal has no interest in talking and avoids all conversation. As soon as they reach the bridge, John points at the alien sleeping upside down hanging on the wall. Scared to wake them up, the group slowly sneaks away without making any sound. When they get to the bike shop, Tom orders them to check on the functional bikes and fill them up with gas so they can take them back. While John and Di are rummaging around in the back, John hits Di in the head and escapes with a motorbike, heading straight to the sleeping aliens. Once he's there, he uses an explosive he took from Di and gas to burn them alive. Back at the camp, Michael and Anne try to figure out the workings of the captured alien mind. Anne tries to stimulate a response by showing it pictures, hoping it has an emotional factor just as humans. Hearing what she said, Michael gets an idea and exposes the alien to one of its dead breathers and gets an aggressive reaction, proving her point. Feeling like there's no way to communicate with it, Michael decides to dissect the creature, while Anne argues that it is a bad decision. Michael arrogantly shuts her concerns down, telling her that he wouldn't be questioned by her. In the other room, Mike is watching over his son when he suddenly wakes. He tries to talk to Rick but realizes his son has no recognition of him. Upset at what the aliens had done, Mike takes his gun and threatens to shoot the alien if it refuses to answer his questions. Mike angrily sticks the muzzle of the gun in the alien's head, which causes it to immediately pass out. In the other room, Scott, Matt, and Ann notice static coming from the makeshift radio they had built and are curious where it's coming from. The static is continuous for a few seconds and abruptly cuts out. When Mike reports what he had done to Anne, she senses that the static and the alien screeching might be related, so she decides to cut through the brain of the dead alien to see if she could find something. While working on the corpse, they hear the static again and hurry back to the lab to find that Rick had put the harness back on. The alien was able to communicate its thought to Rick, but the angry Mike rips it off of him before it sets root once again. After the stunt John pulled, the bike shop is encircled by harnessed children with guns. As soon as they see Tom and the others, they immediately open fire, hurting Di in the leg, creating a distraction for the children to shoot. Tom and the others escape the shop, managing to kill one of the aliens on the way out. When they return to camp, Tom makes his report to Weaver and explains that the aliens' new tactic was to use their children. He also explains that the more they engage with the creatures, the more they understand that they aren't much different from humans. Tom then requests to go out to find drugs that would help during the deharnessing process, which Weaver immediately grants. Later, Tom and Hal talk while going through the Harry Potter books Ben loved so much. Mentioning his brother, Hal tells Tom that although they would do their best to rescue Ben, he might not be the same kid they knew before he was taken. He explains that when he was caught by the aliens, Ben was looking right at him when he dragged Karen's body away. Tom doesn't want to believe what Hal is saying might be true and tells him that he knows Ben, assuring him that everything will be all right. Later, the community gathers to have dinner and they all hold hands, thanking God for allowing them to find each other so they didn't have to go through these hard times alone. Episode 5. The following day, Tom and his crew spend the entire day looking for drugs to help the harness children. Carrying as much as they could in their bags, Maggie and Hal make it back around evening. Aunt and Tom are surprised by the amount of drugs Maggie was able to find. When they're alone, and warns Tom not to get his hopes up too high, telling him that there is no guarantee that the procedure will work perfectly because they are having problems with Rick. The following morning, Tom and Hal approach Weaver and tell him that they need to go in immediately or they will lose their chance to save the children. The captain agrees but suggests that they keep the aliens asleep as long as they can when they infiltrate the hospital. Scott is in one of the classrooms working on the radio they're building while listening to music on a record player. When Tom and Hal get there, he tells them that he has discovered that the aliens use radio waves to communicate with each other and explains that he would be able to pick it up if they're transmitting. Although he has some ideas, he tells Tom that it isn't ready to be used out in the field as a detection system. Disappointed, Tom and Hal leave to practice how to shoot a crossbow after taking the advice of the captain. Although they practice, the art is too new to them and they struggle to get a hang of it. Passing by, Maggie sees the two men and comes over to help. She gives Hal some pointers on how to shoot accurately, but to no avail. Maggie sees the map and recognizes it as the hospital the children were being held in because she used to repeatedly go there to visit her aunt. Maggie gives them the best idea for an entry point, and they stand together strategizing their next move. In the lab, Michael concocts a new serum to use on the alien and opens the small cage door to administer it. Suddenly, the creature grabs him by the neck and starts strangling him. Michael struggles and screams under the alien's strong grip until Anne and the others hear his shouts and come to save him. Anne checks on Michael, who had fallen on the ground, and realizes he is dead. When Weaver finds out about the incident, he becomes livid, eager to dispose of the creature as soon as possible, but Anne stops him. She tells him that there is still a lot they need to learn. Angry, Weaver gives her 24 hours before the alien is killed. Tom finds Weaver and Hal talking, and they explain the new idea the boy had come up with. He explains to Tom that he would make it look like he is wearing the harness and sneak into the hospital unnoticed and escape with Ben. After a long debate, Tom reluctantly agrees, but only if they're able to find a way to kill the aliens without making any noise. Hal and Tom take their problem to Anne, who remembers the theory Mike and Hal had about the soft palate in the alien mouths. Adamant about proving the theory, Anne distracts it by making it look like she's giving it water, then jumps inside the cage, shoving her scalpel deep inside its mouth and killing it swiftly. Anne is disturbed by what she has to do, but puts on a brave face, telling Tom that it wasn't hard for her to do because all she needed was to picture the image of her family that were killed by the creatures. Tears swelling up in her eyes, she tells Tom that the only reason she's not putting up anything on the wall is because she has no memento of her family, and walks away. That night, Hal fake straps on the harness and heads out to the hospital with his dad and crew. Once they're close enough, Tom quizzes him on the exact directions he would need to take to get to his brother and sends him off. As soon enters the hospital, he follows the directions he had strictly memorized. Maneuvering through the vast hallways, he finds an alien leading a group of children, including Ben, and slowly joins in. The creature makes the children huddle up in one ball together and cradles them to sleep as if they were a mother. Once he's sure the alien is asleep, Hal slides his knife out of his pocket and stabs it in the mouth just as a worried Tom and Maggie walk into the room. Giving the rest of the crew the signal, they manage to rescue all of the children that were under the control of that particular alien. The team rushes the children to the hospital, and Anne works fast to get the harness off of each one of them as quickly as she can before they go through withdrawal from a drug that is being released through it. Anne manages to save all of the children except one, which devastates her. Hal waits to hear the news outside the recovery room and has a heart-to-heart with Maggie, who divulges that she used to have cancer when she was 16 but managed to pull through, which explained her intimate knowledge of the hospital. After she leaves, Tom sits next to Hal and tells him that Ben has pulled through and expresses how proud he is of him. As the scene ends, we see the community happy to have gained some of their children back, and a little hope is restored in their heart. Captain Weaver goes around checking on everyone, proud of what they were able to accomplish. Done with his rounds, he goes back into his office and opens the music he had been avoiding listening to after losing his family. The song reverberated across the school, In the infirmary, Ben finally wakes up and sees Tom sitting in front of him and recognizes him immediately, making the family ecstatic.